I started growing my personal brand on LinkedIn when I was a recruiter at a tech company. So really what I was doing is drawing people to the organization, but through my own personal brand. We're not all of a sudden going to become Kardashians and millionaires and ignore the company we work for. What actually is happening is what the company should want from us. It's brand ambassadorship.
Miranda Von Fricken is the CEO of LinkedIn Awesomeness. After leveraging the power of LinkedIn for her personal brand and business, she began training teams and business owners on how to do the same. Miranda is known as the go-to for all things personal brand for the purpose of professional elevation. She helps her clients create a magnetic personal brand to attract future clients, new hires, referral partners, career opportunities, and more. And today we're going to be talking about how you can begin to build your brand on the platform that Miranda is an absolute expert on, which is LinkedIn. We're going to have a lot of fun. Building a personal brand isn't just for your business. It's also if you are currently working for an organization or a company and you're looking to stand out and really put your skills to the test and show them what you can do and build a name for yourself inside of an existing structure and organization. So this isn't just for business owners. It's not just for people inside of organizations. It's for both. And we're going to talk about exactly who it's for in just a minute with Miranda. When you take away even just one strategy, one tip, one philosophy that helps you, or maybe Miranda just brightened your day, then please just share this show with one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason the show has grown the way it has over the past 2 years and almost 300 episodes, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. So without further ado, let's talk to our guest of the hour, Miranda Von Fricken. What's up, Miranda?
Hello. I'm still dancing from your intro music.
It's a bop. It definitely gets you going. Yes. It's
definitely a vibe. I love it.
100%. I can't believe it's taken this long to get you on the show. And I know I just said that, but for everyone listening, you've got people, 84% of listeners are not local. So, I mean, we're from the similar area. So you're near Albany, New York, which is the capital of New York. I'm 50 minutes north of you for the most part. We never met in person, but here we are on the interwebs about to have an awesome conversation on branding. So
I can't wait. I love it. It's actually more special when you're kind of local to each other, right?
Yeah, it is.
Really does take us all over the world. But when you can connect closer locally, it's a little more meaningful. I love that.
It's so true. 100%. And I hope I get to meet you. Maybe when we do the podcast in person, you'll be one of the first guests, which will be super cool.
I'm there. I'm already there.
Awesome. Cool. So let me ask you, Miranda, where did your passion for branding come from? And for those who are, inside of an organization and they're tuning in because they watch all the other episodes, what is this concept of branding to you?
So it all stemmed from me being laid off, if I'm being completely honest. And I think this is a timely conversation because layoffs are happening again. And it's partially the layoff, but it's also partially me feeling like I was being silenced. I was told often that I'm too much in the corporate space, that I had to kind of water down my type of awesomeness because I was in human resources and honestly, my personality is needed to resource the humans. Yes. However, sometimes it was seen as immature or just not the type of brand that the organization was going for, but they always loved my results. So they had a hard time with balancing out my awesomeness with their level and definition of professionalism. So I started growing my personal brand on LinkedIn when I was a recruiter at a tech company. So really what I was doing is drawing people to the organization, but through my own personal brand. So when you say how did you come into branding? I almost stumbled upon it, right? I didn't say I'm going to create this personal brand so people come here and I can hire them. It just happened. I just started to give less craps, if I may, about what people thought and how too much I was. And I just started to own my awesomeness, which is actually the title of my book coming up. Cool. Shameless plug. But I just started to own it and I just started to put it out there. And after maybe a few years of doing that on LinkedIn, the organization started to realize all right, we're just going to let her do her because it works, right? And then I got recruited by another organization because of what I was doing for that current company because of my personal brand. But after, an acquisition, there was a layoff. I was one of the first to go because I was the last one in. And it just kind of happened that my personal brand was big enough to take my side hustle full time. So the pandemic happened. I said, I'm never going back to the corporate space. And I started to really look at this concept of personal brand because I needed to now draw people to me, but to also buy into what I was selling. So it was part because it was created not out of necessity, but out of just kind of organic strategy for recruiting in my corporate space. And then it morphed into something larger than life, which is kind of how I roll anyway. So it worked out. And everything I do, I partner in my faith. So I said to God, like, what am I going to do with this? I can't just be silly and crazy and like bright colors and confetti. I need to be strategic about this. So I sat down and I really hashed out what a personal brand is. I studied marketing and communications in college. My master's is in motivation. So I took that energy, if you will, and that's how I define my personal brand, is the energy I bring to the room or to the conversation, and just started getting a little more strategic about it. And that's kind of what happened from there.
So first of all, I never knew that you could get a master's in motivation.
Yeah, Empire State College. It's a master's in liberal studies. You pick the concentration. I picked motivation. I would have picked awesomeness had I thought of it at the time.
I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, though.
I mean, they really do.
In a big way. Yeah. I love that. What a great story about how you, in a way, stumbled upon the world of personal branding. And it's a very different story than mine, but similar in the way that I never intentionally set out to build a personal brand, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been doing it for much less time than you've been doing it. And I know I'm going to learn a lot from this conversation, but it's fascinating how a personal brand, well, I'll start it by saying this. It's fascinating how a company for years and years and years used to be the vehicle that delivered you to the next opportunity, right? You move up to the next position, and eventually you're at the quote unquote top. If you look at how we traditionally advance in corporate America. But now a personal brand is your vehicle to bring you from opportunity to opportunity, because it's not necessarily, it's a very different world now of you're not just advancing inside of one company indefinitely. Like I've been with the same company now for almost 11 years because I love the company, but for years I was training all the new salespeople that came into this company. So 20 new salespeople a month, over 1,000 new salespeople. And I was like a local celebrity inside of this company. And those are their words, not mine, right? Because I knew everybody at the company parties. You know, I'd be going up to everyone. I knew everyone's name. It was fun. It was a good time, which felt cool, right? It stroked my ego for sure.
Yes.
But then when I started building a personal brand, I realized I know nobody, right? That's when I met people like Christine Smith and Brian Rollo and Jennifer Hendricks Fogg. And I started to dip my toes into projects outside of my company. But the fascinating thing is, and I do believe it's very important to, you know, in order to open up new opportunities inside of the company you're in, it's important to have leaders or managers, whatever you want to call them, who are open and receptive to the idea of you building your personal brand. Although it sounds kind of wonky of the idea that they wouldn't be accepting of you building yourself outside of their company. Like, let me ask you this, because when I started this, I remember in 2019 was when I really intentionally began to build this thing, and the broadcast came in 2021, but I wrote my book in 2019 while I was still at the height of leadership in this company. And it almost in a way scared and threatened my leaders. They were very kind, and they still are, by the way, and they understand it much more now. But they were like, why are you taking your time to do these things outside of the company when you could be placing your time in the company? Like, what do you say to the people who understand what you just mentioned about personal brand? They want to build it, but they believe that they don't have the space to build it inside of the structure that they're in, if that makes sense.
You have to give less ducks. I mean, very sassy, but let's be honest here. They are threatened. My Disrupt HR talk back in, I believe, 2020, right before the pandemic, so maybe it was 2019, was crazy, sexy talent embracing the personal brand for employees. There are, and I call them Corporate Joe, so no offense to any Joes out there, but the corporate person is very threatened by the personal brand. We're not all of a sudden going to become Kardashians and millionaires and like ignore the company we work for. What actually is happening is what the company should want from us. It's brand ambassadorship. I brought people to the organization I worked for through my personal brand, but for the organization. So if you are somebody who thinks, I want to do this, but I'm afraid, one school of thought is to ask permission. That is not my school of thought. I am the ask for forgiveness type.
Yeah.
So I say tread lightly, go slowly, but always be supportive of the organization that you're with. There is a way to marry the two, personal brand as well as employee. You can do both. And obviously you're a huge example of it. How do you turn your personal brand into a benefit for the company, for the organization? That's probably the key question to ask yourself, and then kind of go from there.
So how can you, in a way, because this does lead into the next question, how can you, in a way, marry your skills and talents with also the best interests of the company that you're in? And the reason I say this is because when people think of personal brand, they think of what space would you like to occupy in the various many spaces that are out there to occupy. As an example, and I'm going to use a very far out example. If you are a knitter, right, and you love to knit, you knit everything, and you really just want to be a part of that knitting space, then what if you're in a sales company that has nothing to do with yarn and knitting, right? So like, how could that person marry their skills and talents with what they're doing there? So my question for you, and I think this ties into it, is how does one define their space when building their personal brand? Like, and I guess it could also be asked as, where does one begin?
Yeah. So A, do you have to define it, or can you just be exactly who you are and that's your personal brand, right? Like my definition of personal brand isn't hot pink, bubbly, bright blonde hair, blue glasses. My definition of personal brand, I said earlier, is energy, right? The energy I bring to the room and the conversation, which is joyful, which typically involves hot pink and blue glasses. However, if you're the knitter, right? Think of all the people that you're bringing to your personal brand that may need your organization's offerings, but would have never found them because they're just obsessed with knitting and only follow things knitting on social media. So many times someone had put in a cover letter to a job I was hiring for. I found this organization through Miranda Von Fricken on LinkedIn. I would have never known this organization existed. Then I dove into it, did a little research, found this job, and now I need it. And they become like a huge employee for the organization. Had this person not been on LinkedIn, maybe following the hashtag, I don't know, awesomeness or something, you know what I mean? Like or maybe they were just trying to learn a little about LinkedIn or personal branding. So then they found me, which then they dive into the person. So really what you're doing is the knitting is attracting people to you, the individual, through knitting, but then it stems off to the other things you're a part of too, which could be, a tech recruiter. You could be a plumber. Your husband can be, an electrician, and you're connected to all these things. But the way you magnetized yourself and drew them into you, the individual, but just happened to be knitting, So it's a nice way to really take the pressure off of how do I take my skill set as an accounting person, right? I'm in accounts receivable and I want to have a personal brand. It doesn't have to be about numbers or accounting. It can be about knitting, if you can be on LinkedIn, you can be on any social site and talk about knitting. I actually have one of my biz besties is obsessed with thrifting. It has nothing to do with her 9 to 5. She's obsessed with thrifting, but because people are also obsessed with thrifting, apparently, they get to know her and they want to learn more about her. And it turns out they realize what she does for a living. And then they happen to check her out there too and be like, oh, if she likes this, maybe I would too. So it's a beautiful way to say, I don't have to marry the two in a way that is obvious. It can just be, I'm the thing that connects the two, me personally. And that's where the personal brand comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. So Jennifer Hendricks Fogg introduced us. And I love your example of they fall in love with who you are. Maybe it's through knitting, as this far out example, right? No offense to the knitter. I've never personally.
I love knitting.
I like that's super cool. Okay, awesome. So, and now everyone knows that about you, right? So you're just attracting a whole new audience, which is great. So Jennifer introduced us, and Jennifer is the author of Tiny Miracles, right? She speaks on resilience, and she does it in such a powerful way where she helps a lot of people that way. And then they get to know her, and they get to know her story and her son Logan's story and all of that. And they're like, oh, you sell insurance too through Aflac? I have a business of a team of people who could really use that, right? And they could go to another insurance company that might even have a better rate. But because they like her and they love her message and they know and trust her, they're much more apt to give her their business because they know who she is and they want to give her their money in whatever way because they want to support her while also getting the benefit of the insurance or whatever else that person does. Is that like the lines of where you're going?
Yeah, and let's take that a step further because Aflac, her organization, does nothing but support her 100%. The books, the sponsorships, like Logan Strong Foundation, they support her. So it's reciprocal, right? So she's being awesome in her personal brand, being this awesome mom, and Aflac isn't fighting her on it. They're allowing her to be exactly who she is and supporting her, which actually makes me want Aflac even more. And now I'm going to tell my friends about it, right? So that's how a personal brand can really boost an organization, but the organization has to take the ego out of it. They're not saying, Jennifer, you got to walk around in a duck suit and only talk about Aflac. Like, they're not telling her that. However, she brings that duck with her whenever she does public speaking. I don't think it's on the book, but I know because she feels so loved and supported by her organization, it's now a partnership and everybody's making money.
Yes, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And it's really weird. So in the company that I've worked with for over 10 years, it's very separate in a way from what my quote unquote brand is, even though that's a part of my brand. It's almost like I got into the habit of separating what I do for a living, which pays the bills, 90% of them, versus the podcast and the private coaching and those things. And I know other people too who are like, well, do I want to talk about what I do for work when I'm creating content? And we'll talk about, how to actually build it, and content goes into that, I'm sure. But like, it's almost like we're hiding a piece of who we are. Like, as an example, I sell cell phones and I've done that for over 10 years and I train other people to do it. And it just seems very separate and disjointed from everything else that I talk about as a brand when it comes to social health and emotional health and physical health and the idea of self-mastery and being better. Although I guess they really do tie into each other very well. So where I'm going with this is, should I not be shy to incorporate what I do for a living into what I talk about in my branding, or should I keep those things separate? And I think this is like an extension to what we've been talking about.
So if you want your company to pay 100% of your bills, I say marry the two, not just 90%, right? So here's my thought on that. I've lived the separate life where this is my 9-to-5 hat and this is my Miranda motivational speaker, life coach, business coach hat. I've done the separation thing. It was only when I started to marry it that I started to see the power of it. Unfortunately, this was like 5 years ago. So the organizations weren't as hip to the awesomeness that is personal branding. And they felt threatened by it, or they just felt my personal brand was bigger than theirs. And I was getting more attention than maybe the results that were being brought into them. And I get that, but they didn't see it's a long game. Personal branding isn't like instant results. It's the long game. Just like LinkedIn. I tell all my LinkedIn clients, LinkedIn is a long game. So if you plan on being in business more than next month or more than next year, respect the longevity and the solidness that LinkedIn is, as is the personal brand. So for you, there's no reason you can't find a fun and creative way to subliminally slide in the cell phone stuff, what you do, why it's amazing. Maybe you do an interview on your cell phone and it's brought to you by your cell phone organization. Like, there's so many cool ways for you to partner with the current organization to boost both of your brands, right? Like, they don't have to literally hand you a check and sponsor you, but it's not a bad idea if you're listening, whoever you work for.
Yeah, it's true. It
really is true. Think of how this is influencer 101, right? So for the organizations, think of it as you now have an influencer in your midst. They are the go-to person to get reach for your organization. They should bring you in and say, how can we work together that feels right for you? Because this is your personal brand. So that's one thing you would have to remember, and say, how can we not only do the 9-to-5 thing, but how can we work together to maybe benefit us both in a different capacity outside of your job description, right?
Yes.
And you both come up with something that you feel comfortable with. That's being an influencer, and organizations hire influencers all the time.
Whoa. Listen up, leaders. That's a great piece of advice, but that's also great advice for the person who's building their brand in the organization to have a path forward, right? So I love that because, and I do work for a very, very supportive company, and I promise these stories do tie into you, the listener, everyone listening right now. This is relevant to you because I'll give you an example. It's been since 2019 that I've been intentionally building this brand, and only recently, about a year ago, I was approached by the owner of all the cell phone stores in upstate New York, who's a friend of mine. And he said, hey, I love everything you're doing with the podcast. I know you love to make these videos. You've helped us do it in the past. We would love you to be the talent and create consistent monthly videos for us and have an in-company YouTube channel that they now pay me to help produce with you might know him, Todd Bailey. Are you familiar with Todd Bailey?
Yes, Todd did my first video reel. He came to LinkedIn Local and recorded the event. Yes. Oh my God, so cool. Small world.
He's one of the greatest human beings alive. And we work together inside of this company to produce their YouTube channel, essentially, in a way. And it's not quite that, but we create trainings and sales trainings, but that opportunity wouldn't have happened if I didn't do exactly what you're saying right now. Put myself out there, do things on my own. They brought me in to do different trainings based on my brand. So for those out there listening, thinking, how can building my brand help benefit me and my company inside of an organization? This is exactly how it can do that, right?
It can help you get promoted within, and it can help you be seen outside, right? Yeah. And so that's where the threatening part comes into play sometimes with the organizations. They think you're getting so big, which, let's be honest, again, we're not all becoming Kardashians. Like, we're not going to get that big here on, well, maybe we could, but we'll see.
Yeah, you're getting there. You're getting there.
I do what I can. I'm not, but I'll take it. But there's definitely this weird feeling in it. Again, it's ego, not just the person feeling it, but also the company as a whole, for them to think like, well, if they get so big, they're not going to like buy our widget. They're just going to go to this person. And the partnership is where you kind of ease that tension. So if you're thinking, where do I start? Just start by being you on social media. Start posting about your knitting or your softball team. Or what I started literally by not only posting the jobs we were hiring for, but the cultural side of things. So if you're in a company, that's how you can start to marry like the personal side of your organization is the cultural stuff. What are you doing? Are you having milkshakes on Mondays, bagel Fridays? But post some of the fun, cool stuff into your personal social media and tag your company and be like, I love this place, blah, blah, blah. Show them that you're for them still. You're not trying to get rid of them. You're not trying to build this personal brand so you can get a new job. Although if that's your goal, maybe you just start talking about your skill sets and articles you've read and things you're learning to show the world, put a little spotlight on your passion for climbing this, educational side of what you do, the industry. You're learning more than ever, so you talk about, hey, I'm taking this class, or hey, went to this conference, stuff like that. That's a part of your personal brand that still ties into the current organization because your knowledge will help them, but it also can get seen by others outside too. So I think we as the individual have to kind of get away from the either or mentality and say, how can it benefit everybody today? And then if somebody sees you, great. How can I then benefit them in the future if they hire me? There's so many different things that can come of this. It's the partnership within your current organization. For job seekers, if you have no organization, a personal brand is going to make you stand out. If I had 2 resumes 5 years ago and I looked up a person on LinkedIn and it was blank and nothing was on it, and I looked up somebody on LinkedIn and it was like exciting, very focused on their industry, thought leadership all over the place, I'd want that person because there's someone who goes above and beyond. There's someone who's really passionate and they show their passion on their profile. So I would want that person if you're a job seeker. So that may help.
I used to say every single day to people, you are judged by your cover a book is judged by the cover in a very big way. And a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't judge it like that. You never know what's up underneath the surface. Very
sure,
true.
Let's be honest, it's happening. So get over it and realize it and make it happen. Yeah,
exactly.
We shouldn't judge by a cover. However, we don't have a Love is Blind for the corporate hiring.
Great show, by the way.
I mean, I just watched it. Anyway,
yeah.
It's a whole
Not
different show, probably. That's a different podcast for you. So no hiring is blind, and we disguise our voice, although that would be kind of cool.
Whoa, what a great idea.
It actually would be a really good idea.
Yes.
But I think, well, I used to come from recruiting too, like staffing agencies. So we would like take names and all that stuff off of the resumes. So it was kind of like, here's just the skill set, but interviewing would be next level. Oh, my wheels are spinning now, but that's not my space anymore.
Well, interesting how that there works. You would take the names off of it and you would only show their credentials and their skills and all that. I mean, that just goes to show if you have a brand on top of that, like you said, you go to a LinkedIn profile that someone took a few hours of their time to set up, like a few hours once, and then you update it frequently, or, you know, maybe infrequently if you're in the same company, same role, then you don't really have to do much with it after that, but it makes such a giant difference. So what I would recommend to everybody, because we're going to talk about why LinkedIn too here in a minute, but what I'd recommend is everyone go to the link in the description to go check out Miranda's LinkedIn profile, because the easiest way is not to start from scratch, right? Don't start from scratch. Don't reinvent the wheel, right? Look at what someone else is doing who is finding success on this platform and model after them. Don't copy things, but model.
You don't have to be hot pink and sparkles. That may not be your jam.
So, but you said something that scared 2019 Brandon, okay? And what you said was share your life on social media, right? That would scare 2019 Brandon, and it did. And I was terrified. I didn't know what to post. I remember the first video that I posted because I wanted to begin this whole idea of branding because I discovered personal development when I was 21 years old. It was what year was that when I was 21? It was 2017, I believe. A little bit earlier when I was 21, 2015, 2016. And I was overweight. I was unhappy. I was depressed. I found personal development through people like Tony Robbins and Rhonda Byrne and all these big names. And I watched videos of them helping people. And I said, I want to be one of those people to help other people. And I remember the first video I made. It was the most awkward thing ever. It was in my living room. All the picture frames are behind me. Everyone's commenting to me in person like, hey, great video. But I was really distracted by the 500 picture frames behind you and your cat and all these other things. But I was like, wow, people are actually watching this video, though. People are intrigued at what I'm doing. But I was so nervous. And you can even go back to that first video, guys, on my YouTube channel. I was like mean mugging the camera. I was like yelling at the camera. It's like it wasn't. Yeah, it was too serious. It wasn't me now, right? And even now I feel that I do my best to be 100% authentic, but there's something that happens when the camera turns on, especially at the beginning, that can take a little bit of that away. So let's talk to the person who's like, Miranda, you've sold me. I want to build my personal brand. I understand the importance. How do I begin sharing my life on social media? And maybe this could be a great segue into, should I do it on LinkedIn?
So the answer is yes. If you're awesome, you're on LinkedIn. Here's my thought before you even start posting anything is to get really quiet and still with yourself, get a little pen and notebook out and ask yourself why, right? Like, why do I feel I need to share anything about myself? Is it to build a brand? Is it to get a new job? Is it just to have a social presence? Like, am I looking to get promoted? Like, what is your today, current season's goals for doing this, right? If it's just, and I hear this often, and it's okay if this is your answer, everybody else's, I feel like I should, then I want you to go a little deeper, right? Ask yourself why a few different times, a few different layers of why, because then ultimately you'll get to the root of why you want to do this. And then you can reverse engineer all the other questions like, how am I going to do this? Like, what am I going to put out there? So I lovingly say that Facebook is for families, right? Is kind of how I use my Facebook. So I'll put pictures of like out to lunch with my kids or basketball tournaments that I'm traveling to with my daughter. Instagram to me is very like fashion show, museum. So it's beautiful pictures and photos and some filters and business, definitely business. Facebook to me isn't business, but for other people, I know it is. LinkedIn is a networking event. LinkedIn is I walk into the room, I'm shaking hands, kissing babies. Like, I am on. There is a reason I'm in this room. I've got a goal. And when I go to a networking event, I mean, I host networking events, so I teach this a lot. When I go to a networking event, I have an intention. Why am I here? What is my goal? So that way I'm not just aimlessly going to the, you know, the muffin table, getting a coffee and just kind of like, hey, how you doing with whoever I happen to stumble upon. I do a little research. I know who's going to be in the room. I know who I want to talk to. I know what's going to elevate, you know, my business, my brand in that 45 minutes I get to talk to people. Do the same thing for yourself. Why do you want to post? So the answer is yes to LinkedIn. So then why do I want to post on LinkedIn? What's my ultimate goal? This will help you to have a strategy for your content and not just like randomly posting when the spirit moves you, which is actually a lot of my strategy. However, the strategy of when to post, there's definitely like, I manage LinkedIn profiles for people. So I have strategy for my clients, but my brand is very free flowing, very organic. So I haven't posted yet this week and it's already Tuesday. Like my clients have, because I've posted for them, but for myself, I need it to be super organic. I need to feel very called to put some type of specific value out there. And if I'm not feeling it yet, I'm just not going to do it. So for you who's new and starting out, I typically say, like, put an introduction post out there, right? Who are you? How do you roll? Like, what's your jam? Like, what do you love? Don't put it all in one post, but brain dump it on that piece of paper and then separate it out into like a storyboard, right? Like, hey, this is my first post on LinkedIn in like 10 years or ever. Who's out there? Say hello. I'd love to meet you. And then that's your call to action. They're saying hello. It's a picture of you waving or something cute, fun. And then maybe your next post is like, wow, like 15 of you said hello to me, or 2 of you said hello to me. That was so cool. LinkedIn's starting to get fun. I'm starting to realize why LinkedIn's awesome. Like, why are you on LinkedIn? So there's another question. You're starting conversations that are relevant to your own goals. And also if you're like, all right, I'm beyond the introduction stuff. I really just want to sell my services. I need to grow my brand. So then what are your goals for your brand? And why did you build that product? You know, like, what is the importance of it? So you can come in hard and be like, I invented this widget because it's going to change your life.
Yeah.
Bam, bam, bam. Buy my widget, bam. Like, selling on LinkedIn is definitely a different game than like selling at a brick and mortar. It's definitely more relationship building. It's sharing why you love this product, why it was built, the history of it, the origin story. People love a good story. And they also love color. I'm not going to lie. So make sure there's a lot of color in your photos. The whole psychology of consuming content is a whole different podcast, but you know, bright colors and happy people get a little more attention, right? So keep that in mind too when you're posting.
Okay, great. So keep it free flowing, right? Share a bit about you, talk about why you started building this quote unquote brand, right? Start the conversation and begin talking with other people, right? Even if it's one comment, like that's awesome. That's the same thing as you at a cocktail event and someone walks up to you and says, hey, I'm Joe. What's your name? Like that's the same exact thing, except it's on the internet. Right. But what's the difference now between quote unquote real life and the internet? There's no difference. We are cyborgs who carry these things around with us every single day. And when I say these things, I'm holding my phone for those just listening, but it's the same thing. So what if we treated it the same exact way and treated LinkedIn as that networking event to build your brand and create new career opportunities? So for those people listening, how do you, and it might be different now than it was at the beginning, but I'm curious, how do you create goals for your personal brand? Do you look at it from a numbers perspective? Like, I want this many followers. I want to post this many times a week. Like, is it more of an activity goal or an outcome goal or both?
So in the beginning, it was probably like vanity metric based, right? Like it's like, ooh, I want to get like 5,000 followers. You know, when I left the corporate space, I had like a little over 4,000 followers and I thought 5,000 was a cool number. So I connected with people, I engaged heavily, joined in a lot of conversations of other people posting. And I actually did like some random hacks, like going on Gary Vee's posts and talking to other people. So I would follow big followers and kind of like steal their people, right? Not like negatively, but they would share, you know, they like him, they're going to like me. So we did a lot of that. And then as time progressed, I stopped looking at the follower count and more about my bank account. So now 5+ years, I mean, I've been on LinkedIn since 2007. So obviously like my strategy has changes every year, pretty much like daily when the algorithm changes, but we'll just talk about yearly. Right now, my strategy is more about, like, honestly, I ask God every morning, who do I need to help today? Who are you bringing to me? Bring someone I can help change their life. So for me, it's more of that life coaching stuff, my inspirational high level content. My business is LinkedIn and coaching and speaking, but I don't really, you notice if you look at my content, there's not a lot of like, hire me for this, or let me help you do that. It's a lot of the inner work, the self-leadership that I'm so passionate about. It's putting out content that inspires people. It's asking deep questions. It's just loving on my audience. And so now I have less of a strategy and more of an energy. So I'll say like, what am I feeling today? Well, today I'm super busy. I'm back to back to back all day. So maybe I put out a post about balance, or as my client Nancy will say, work-life blending, right? Like maybe it's something that I need today. So I think my clients may need it too, or my future clients may need. Or if there's something crazy happening in the world, maybe I'll post something that's really like raw and real about what's happening. When I saw a bunch of companies doing layoffs, I broke out my story about being laid off 4 times in a row after the death of my little brother, and like how tragic it was, but then how beautiful it became after the fact, right? Because we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only do it looking back. So I give hope to people and say, listen, I was there too. You've been laid off. So have I. Here's what I did. So it can almost be like a little like hope and a little map with some strategy for the people out there. So when I say, what are my goals for LinkedIn? It's just, how do I want to make people feel today? And everybody's, that's my brand, right? So everybody's is different. Maybe somebody's like, I want to get on a bigger stage, right? I want to get a bunch of people on my podcast. Like if that's your goal, you're going to talk more about your podcast and the interview that you get to do today and the cool people you get to meet and why podcasting has helped you grow personally. It's subliminally dropping the word podcast all throughout your content. And ultimately, people will understand and realize that you interview people on podcasts. And so if they're that person, or they know somebody who's that person, they'll tag those people and you'll get more people coming to you that want to be interviewed on a podcast.
That's so true. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I love that intention of you starting your day. And like you said, asking God, bring me someone that I can serve today, or who will I serve today? And just beginning the day with that intention. And for those who are out there who are still like, oh man, I'm so afraid. Like, where do I begin? How do I start? Just you already know the answer. Just start, right? Make that post, make that introduction post. It doesn't have to be beautifully worded and spaced and structured with emojis, and just make the post, because the reality is a lot of people aren't going to see it. Right. And,
oh man, that's so true.
and you never know. I guess it could go viral and you're like, what is happening? How did this go viral? But the reality is, like, your first 100 posts are probably going to get like 2 engagements, and that's okay.
Just
because
you
heard Mr. Beast. He says all the time, like, the first 100 videos are like the tutorial. Like, you should film 100 before you even begin to measure what's working, what's not working. You just have to get in the habit of consistently posting. This is why most podcasts get to 9 episodes and they stop, right? This is why a lot of people begin building their brand and they stop. Like, it's about, even if you just posted at the beginning once a week. Yeah. Awesome. And then
all right. So for those of your people who have kids, right? Like, I'm going to put it out there real, because I'm older than you. I don't know if you have kids, but I do. And so I'm older. I got kids. Think about when you have a baby, you're not instantly going to send them to college and they're going to be successful. You have to nurture that thing forever. That baby needs to be held and washed and changed. He or she gets dirty, blah, blah, blah. Like, all the things, right? Like, so it is long-term loving on this entity, or obviously a baby in this case, but same for LinkedIn, same for your social. Like, it's a long game. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not going to jump on LinkedIn and get all the clients and make buku bucks. So if you hear people saying, like, take my challenge and you're going to be a millionaire at the end of it, they're fibbing. That's not true. Like, it may get you started, but it's consistency with LinkedIn, just like raising a child. It's consistency, right? Like being consistent in who you are and what you put out and your values and the energy you bring to the platform. And don't worry so much in the beginning about the amount of people commenting or liking or sharing. That's great. But right now you're getting comfortable with it. And you talk about Mr. Beast's 100 videos. I mean, next thing you know, you've got a cheeseburger that's delicious. I mean, I'm just here for all of the growth and the long-term energy. And that's the thing we really need to kind of wrap our brain around. We are very like quick, I want it now, like influencer mode, like somebody posts something and I'm buying it on TikTok 5 seconds later. LinkedIn's not as much like that. LinkedIn is an instant gratification. It's building relationships just like raising your child or dating somebody. You don't walk up to them, you meet them at a Starbucks and start making out with them. That's assault. You're going to walk up, say hello. It's going to be awkward at first, casual. You're sipping coffee together. Next thing you know, you'll enjoy each other and it becomes something that blooms. So I say, plant your seeds, start with yourself, plant some really cool seeds, and then you will all of a sudden see it grow, right? So I've been going hard on LinkedIn. Well, I got laid off 5-ish years ago. And so I went from 4,000 followers to now about 20,000 followers in about 5 years, right? So that's a steady growth. It looks humongous, right? But really it was steady every year. But now that I'm close to 20, I bet your 40 will be around the corner. So it's like the bigger you get, the quicker it kind of like compounds. So, but it's the quality, right? Like if my engagement was one comment, I'd be like, okay, what's happening? Right. So it's not just about the quantity of followers or the quantity of posts you put out. You can post once a week and build a really nice conversation and keep it going for over a week if you're doing it right. Right. So
that's right.
It's all about value. It's about engaging. It's about building the relationships on the platforms that you're on. And then people will stick with you and then they'll share with their friends.
Yeah. And again, guys, when you go to Miranda's LinkedIn, which is in the description, you're going to see where she is now and you're going to see her outcome now. But like she just said, it's taken her 4 or 5 years to get there from where she was after she left her corporate career. So just remember, it takes time and just start now. And my greatest advice for anybody is when I first started building my brand in 2019, I had no idea where to begin. I didn't have the time to just try a bunch of different things and watch 500 different YouTube videos. You can, the information's free out there. You can go find it. I invested in a course, and it was actually the first course I ever invested money in. And I spent $2,000 on this course. And it wasn't even like what you'll get when you work with Miranda. It's not like one-on-one or group or whatever. We'll talk about that. Like it was pre-recorded and I went through it and I took great notes and I just implemented what it talked about. And I was afraid to invest that $2,000. I was nervous to invest it. My wife supported me. So I was like, you know what? Here's my credit card. Let's do this. And it was quite possibly the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made, not in my career, but in my life to do that. So I'd like to ask you, Miranda, for the people out there who do have the financial resources to grow faster and learn faster and more directly, what does it look like to work with you to help them build their personal brand?
First, I got to say, I love that you brought that up because investing is scary, right? Because you often don't know what the results are going to be, even if the person says, here are your results, But I like to look at it as if I want to impress, I have to invest, right? So if I want to impress my audience or impress the people in the world, like I need to invest in myself, which is what you did originally with personal development. And then I have to invest my time, my energy, as well as my financial resources because I'm not an expert in everything. I'm an expert in a couple things, right? So that's where I'm going to sell, but I'm not an expert in like financial stuff. So I have people who I pay. Like I'm not even an expert in Instagram. So I outsource a lot of my Instagram. So there's a lot of stuff you have to invest in. And it's scary at first. I remember the first time I invested in business with Marie Forleo's B School. Cool. It was like maybe 19,000 or 1900,977 or something crazy. It was like $1,900. And I remember hitting the button to submit and something in me changed. Like I didn't even, I'm still like 5 years later on module 1 because I didn't even take the course.
Oh man. Wow.
But just hitting submit and giving her my money, which is nothing to her, but a lot to me at the time, changed something in me because I said yes to myself. So that is kind of like what really changed a lot of the investing mindset for me, is just even saying yes to myself and submitting that money also meant I had to earn it back, right? I remember the first time I invested in a business coach, it was like $600 a month for a year commitment. I could afford that first month, but I couldn't the next month. And I was like, how am I going to earn that next month to just pay her? And then after that, it was like off to the races and it was nothing. But like, I remember it forces you to work and to move forward. So invest if you can. If you can't, find something smaller. So, which is why I have multiple packages. So you asked how to work with me. So I do everything from a one-time strategy call, which is kind of like the lowest investment you can get, a couple $100. You get 60 to 90 minutes with me, depending on your needs and level. And you leave that call feeling confident in your ability to create, right? To get on LinkedIn or to create that personal brand. You now have a strategy of what to do, and then you go do it, right? And so that's the cool part. Next level of investment is kind of like a done for you / train you, where people will pay me to create the personal brand, the optimization, the actual profile on LinkedIn. I do it for you. We talk for 30 to 45 minutes. I design the thing in less than a week. It's all yours, ready to go. Then we hop on a call and I train you for 60 minutes on what to do with it now, right? The thing is, you don't want to invite people to your profile if it looks crazy. So it's awesome to now know what to do when you feel confident about posting, but you're going to bring them to your page. Does it say what it needs to say? Does it look the way you want to be perceived? You mentioned, first impressions. Well, if I go to your LinkedIn page, am I going to be impressed or am I going to go away? Right. So take a little self audit. So there's that. That's, I do it all for you. Optimization. I create the banner. I write your about section. I keyword search, hashtag research, all the things. You are ready to go the minute we're done. And then I teach you how to use it. So you feel confident using it yourself. Then the third level of how to work with me is a complete done for you. I do everything I just talked about, but then I also write your content and post it for you. So a lot of the higher level executives that are in the area who want a personal brand, who want to put content out, but just don't have the time. Or actually, most of my clients are solopreneurs, right? So they have a small team and either their marketing team doesn't get LinkedIn, so they just outsource it to me, or they're a solopreneur who really sees the value, but doesn't have the time. So they'll say, hey, here's all my branding stuff. It's pretty much already like created. I just have to now apply it to LinkedIn. So that's the highest level. I have about 7 clients that I do that for. I used to do it for like corporations, hospitals, but now I'm mostly into like the solopreneur, small businesses at this point. But there's many different, you can get on my email list. You can follow me on LinkedIn. That's all free, right? So check out my Instagram, follow me on LinkedIn, and you'll learn, or follow LinkedIn Awesomeness, which is my company page on LinkedIn, where you'll learn more specific strategies for LinkedIn. So I do separate those a little bit. My personal profile is very like high level inspirational, and my LinkedIn Awesomeness page is very strategic for LinkedIn. So many different levels to work with me, to learn LinkedIn, personal branding. And I'm also a life coach, which I don't actually talk about a lot because people realize it after like following me for a while. So I do one-on-one coaching, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
So awesome. I love that. So guys, go start the conversation with Miranda, whether it's to start with just that first strategy call, or maybe you're already doing very well in your business and you're like, I want to amplify this and go to the next level. Man, bring her on as part of your team.
Give me all your money. I'll do it for you.
And some people are like, please take it. Like, just help me.
2 of my clients right now are like, where do I send the check? I don't even need to get on a call with you.
Yeah.
We have to talk.
Exactly. Yeah. So guys, go start that conversation with Miranda. Links are in the description to her LinkedIn where you can start that conversation, as well as her Instagram and other social profiles. I hope you took a lot out of this conversation. And Miranda, I thank you for joining us here on the show after all this time. We've known each other kind of, but now we got to actually meet and talk. And thank you for just putting it all out there for someone who is just ready to get going with building their brand. It was a pleasure having you on. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much. It was awesome to be here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I hope that you took away even just one branding strategy to take your business and or your career to the next level. We talked about why LinkedIn, where you can begin, what a personal brand is, how you can use it to leverage yourself inside of the organization that you're in, and marry your brand and the organization as one in order to create even more impact and opportunity. And based on where you are in your journey, now you know how you can work with an expert like Miranda to take your brand and or your LinkedIn to the next level. If you took away even just one tip or strategy or philosophy, please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason our show has grown over the past 2 years, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.